Hey guys, welcome back to Listen Bitch Presents Tell Me Why You're Special. This is the arena where we don't just talk about success, we talk about survival because the truth is every single one of us will experience loss. It's the one thing that none of us escape. It's the big guarantee. And yet most people spend their entire lives avoiding conversations about death and about grief and about suffering, avoiding the questions that matter most. But what if grief isn't something that we're supposed to get over? What if it's something that we're meant to grow through? And what if the darkest moments of our lives hold the greatest invitation to wake up? So, today we're going to talk about grief and healing and faith and consciousness and purpose and finding peace after unimaginable loss. Today's guest is Steve Ferrara. He's author of From Grief to Gratitude, a new paradigm on death. He is a speaker, he's a teacher, and someone who transformed devastating loss into a message of hope and healing. Steve, thank you so much for coming into the hot seat today. Um, let's just start at the moment that your world changed forever when you lost your son. What happened inside of you that no one around you could see?
Yeah, you know, uh, my son and I, just to give context to it, were really two souls bonded. I think we traveled together before and after. We could end each other's sentences. We did everything together. He was in business with me.
Oh,
He was just my best friend. And then one night he was out and in a freak car accident, died. To say that my world was shattered, turned upside down. I had studied almost my whole life. I was 49 at the time. I'd studied spirituality, I'd studied religions, I'd studied everything, and nothing made sense after that. I searched within all of the things I've learned, and nothing made sense. The universe had to have made a mistake. How can this perfect 23-year-old man at the top of his game, so excited about his life, getting married soon, you
wow.
know, how would the universe, God, whatever, take him out of his human experience? It made no sense. I was in deep anger
Mm,
at nothing other than the universe. I was a runner at the time, and I would just run through the country roads of my neighborhood, screaming at the top of my lungs. It was in the middle of the winter, just angry at the universe.
mm,
It made a mistake. I did because I was always a journaler. From that next morning after my son's death, I journaled every single day, and it's been for the last 20 years. He died actually 21 years ago now, almost in December. And the journaling, which I never read back until just a few years ago. I was in business. I sold a business, had some time on my hands, decided to read back some of these journals. I had a bookshelf of maybe 30 journals, and as I read them back, I saw this raw emotion. I just was expressing anger, confusion, just my world having been, completely turned upside down. And it was a great place to express that other than, screaming at the universe when I was running, or screaming into a pillow, crying into a pillow, whatever I needed to do, because I still had to live my life. I had two wonderful, beautiful daughters, a wife, a family, a business. Uh, Journaling, though, enabled me to get some of this out of me. And as I read through them, I started to see shifts that were occurring through the months and certainly through the years. And one big shift that started to help me see things in a bit of a bigger, more broad way is that rather than just focusing on this experience from my side,
mhm,
which was a very sad side, having lost my son, my best friend, and every other thing that Christopher represented, it dawned on me in my journaling that I can look at this experience from my son's side.
mhm,
I always did that while he was here. I supported him in his decisions and whatever he thought was right for his life. Why would I not do that if his journey and his destiny was to only live 23 years in this human experience and then move on? It had to start with me accepting, which was the first step, accepting that the universe doesn't make mistakes and that this was his destiny. And as I continued down that road, I was able to then look at it from his side And that was such a release because I broadened the way I viewed this and started to see that this is about Christopher's ongoing journey, and I love him and support him. So why would I not continue to do that just because his journey meant that he wasn't here any longer as a human being? So that was the beginning of a shift, and I talk about that in great detail
Yeah.
in my book. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine that you kind of have to process holding two truths because it can still be true that it's not fair that he's gone, that it was horrific and not okay, but then still like accept it. Was that hard to kind of hold both truths?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think that's true in many of life's challenges, whether it's losses and or a major life challenge. There's the human side of things, but then there's the much bigger picture and maybe the bigger purpose that we're not able to truly understand. But I knew there had to be a bigger purpose. In fact, I felt at one point that this is such a huge, traumatic thing that occurred in my life. I cannot let this experience just have the effect of me just feeling sorry for myself. It made no sense. There had to be a much bigger purpose. There had to be more learning within that experience that something as traumatic as this would happen. And I almost owed it to the experience, so to speak. It would almost been a disrespect to my relationship with my son, I felt, if I did not look for the more deeper meaning for an experience of this level other than to feel sorry for myself.
Yeah.
So that maybe just on blind faith alone made me know there had to be more to this. And in my journaling and in all of the things I did, I read books voraciously. I read books on near-death experiences. I wanted to understand them. I joined groups, not grief groups. I kind of stayed away from them, but more higher consciousness groups, people
Yeah.
that were truly open to understanding spirituality and consciousness in a bigger way. And in doing all of these many things, I just began to see that there is a purpose for everything. We may not understand it, but if I stay open, I'll begin to see the purpose of all of this. And as that shift occurred, and I began to look at it from my son's side, I started to also be able to see that this is not uh, about what could have been.
Yeah.
I could have been a grandfather to his children. It's about what can be. It's about what can be in our ongoing and our growing relationship.
Hmm.
It can be about me continuing to share the love that I have for him. I learned that love is not something you get, it's something you give. And so, if I love my son to that extent, why can't I continue to share it with him and still feel it at the same level? And um, what I began to recognize is that my relationship with my son was so much bigger. And I actually, in my journaling, at one point started to sign off as love your dad and your spiritual partner. I began to see him as a spiritual partner, much bigger than just the human role of him being my son and me being his father. But we were truly walking each other, on this path. And I almost began to feel fortunate. And it sounds strange because I'd love to still have my son here,
Yeah.
but I almost felt fortunate that I have someone that I love so much just on that other side of the veil. And in order for me to continue my relationship with him, he really opened the window for me becoming much closer to my essence, to my truth, to my spiritual reality. And so he was really someone that helped me continue to be closer to my truth and continues to be to this day.
Yeah. I can't, I mean, you went through a parent's worst nightmare, of course, like that no parent should ever have to bury their kid, but I mean, turning this around to recognize like you're building a legacy, and I think Christopher's death is in vain if you keep it to yourself, and the fact that you're willing to share the story and the experience of that and to see the bigger purpose, I think is huge. And I can't imagine that it was easy. I know it didn't happen overnight, so parents listening, like I mean, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but I believe there is probably quite a process to go through this. What,
Yes.
what has kind of been, I mean, what does acceptance look like in reality when your heart is shattered and you're just at the depths of grief? What does that really look like? And
Mm. Yeah, one of the things I had to acknowledge, and I knew this to be truth, because it would make no sense otherwise. Life cannot be here to torture me. Life
mm,
has got to be here to teach me.
teach.
It would make no sense for us to, live on a planet with 8.3 billion other human beings, and that, it's designed to challenge or to torture us. It's designed to challenge us to learn, but it's not designed for unnecessary suffering. And I had to accept fully that life is here to continue to teach me. And with all of the, I guess reflection I've done and pondering, I've come to that conclusion that there is absolute no other purpose for us to be here except that we are students here to learn.
Yeah.
And if I keep that open mind and I keep that curious mind and that student mindset, then I'm going to approach life in a much different way, even including the loss of a child, which, as you said, is the worst thing
Yeah.
in the that a father or mother could experience. But there is a much broader way to look at this as we begin to realize that life is here to teach us. I am not going to resist life. I mean, when you think about resisting life, which is what you're doing when you're, going through what I went through initially, the anger, the grief, and there is a purpose for all of that.
Yeah.
As you said in the opening statement, maybe grief is the doorway to
Yeah.
something greater if we can look at it that way. Grief is not a destination. Grief is part of the journey that opens the door for us to be able to see something in a bigger way if we stay open. Problem is we push those feelings away. We don't want to deal with them, but going through them, processing them, experiencing them takes us to these next levels. And I realized that that's the flow of life as opposed to the resistance to life. When we're resisting life, in essence, what we're doing is saying that we know how to run life better than the universe does, better than
Yeah.
God does. I mean, we don't think of it to that extreme, but if you give it some thought, that's what it is. When you're
Yeah.
resisting life, you're saying, I want it to be different. It's not the way I would have expected it to be. Well, you know, that's not the way life goes. Life hasn't asked me for my opinion ever. And it's, if life has been unfolding for 14 billion years, they say, since the Big Bang, never asked me my opinion, never asked me if I agree. I'm just here for some short period of time, maybe 80, 90, or 100 years.
Yeah.
Who am I to resist what's been occurring for 14 billion years? But we don't think of it in those broad terms. And I fully get it. And I totally respect the grieving process that anyone goes through. But what I try to provide in my book through my life lessons is a pathway that will take you ultimately to gratitude for the experience. And gratitude truly is the great healer.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. When I began to feel grateful for the experience of what I learned, and I continue to learn, not grateful that my son died. Obviously, I'd love
Right.
to still have him here, but gratitude for the experience and all that I've been able to learn, how much closer it's brought me to my spiritual essence and my ongoing journey with him. That's where gratitude truly healed.
Yeah. I love that you explain the difference in that. And I mean, just everything you're saying, I feel like it's, I've had someone close to me that lost an 18-year-old son, and it's always stuck out to me. I was the person she called, and um, even now I see her in her grieving moments, and my heart breaks for her. But I've kind of said all of these things, and I've always felt like, how can I talk to her? For me, I ask God, like, why did you pick me to be the one that answers the phone for her, because I've never experienced this loss, but it makes so much sense to think like, what if you could be grateful for the time that you had, and to think like that was his mission. I feel like in my beliefs. We made an agreement with God. We came here for a human experience. We knew what was going to happen, and we knew we'd remember who we were. Like outside of the meat suit, we knew we would remember who we were. And sometimes those tragic events, like losing Christopher, brought you more to who you are, and highlighted his legacy. um it's, I mean, it's a beautiful conversation to have. I love the perspectives that you have. And not only that, I mean, I can't imagine, a lot of people do stay stuck in their grief, and it's heartbreaking. And I think, you know imagine if the places were swapped and Christopher lost you,
Mm.
and you're in that grief. Like, would your son be down? Would you want him to stay in that grief, or would you want him to launch from that, to become better because of it, to maybe not take life for granted, or to look for more beauty, or to find the gratitude of the experience we have? Let's love our people that we have here today more, because you never know. I mean, a car accident, you Steven, that is, it's not like he had cancer for 6 months and you had a chance and you knew what was coming. And not that the grief is any less painful, but the mentally it's different. It's like someone flipped a switch and your son is, that's it.
Yeah.
So all of these experiences, I just feel like it's amazing. What year would you say that in your grieving, um and no one's timeline is going to be the same, but just a ballpark of like how you moved from that question of like, why did this happen, to what can this teach me? Because I mean, if I sat down with you the first week that you lost your son and I was like,
Mm.
Steven, come on, stop asking why this happened and say, what can this teach me? I mean, you'd probably punch me in the face.
Probably.
Yeah.
But well, you make a great point, Brendan. And what I found with my book, because it's out there and it's actually around the world. I hear from people from Australia and all other
Love that.
places, and sometimes I hear from people who are at that very early stage of grief. And while they thank me for giving them a different perspective, they just have a very hard time getting through, especially even the first two chapters where I talk about the circumstances, and everyone has had circumstances if
Yeah.
someone close to them has died. And I just give it to have a grounding so everyone understands and then move on to the life lessons. But you're exactly right. You do need to be at some point where you're more open. And for me, uh, interestingly enough, although I've heard this from many people, and I think we can all relate,
Mm-hmm.
I hit what I thought was absolute rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only a few months in, and I literally was in such emotional and physical pain, almost
Yeah.
bent over my kitchen table. I can remember this. And I was in such physical and emotional mental pain. And it just dawned on me, it might have been just a little bit of a that went on, like a 5 watt light bulb. But it just said, there's got to be a better way of handling this. This cannot be the way to handle it. I'm just suffering to an
Yeah.
extent that don't know where else to go. And that was a turning point because my mind kind of shut off for a second. The thinking, the looping,
Mm-hmm.
the sadness, everything just kind of shut down for a second. And that little light bulb went on and gave me hope that there is a better way. And from that moment on, I just went for wanting to understand that better way.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how it happens for others. I've talked to so many, and many have related to what I've said. Some have not been able to find their way, and unfortunate. And what I would say, and I don't say it to, I say it because I feel like
Yeah.
I've gone through enough to say this. But both my son and my wife died, but I was not going to identify as a grieving father for the rest of my life. I was not going to identify as a widow who lost his young wife for the rest of my life. That was not going to be an identity. And I think, and I'm not sure, but sometimes people can get caught up in that identity that they
Mm-hmm.
think they're supposed to have, because if they don't, then they feel guilty that they didn't love that person enough.
Yeah.
And that is completely upside down thinking.
It is.
So we need to move forward, realizing that. those feelings and emotions may be there, but they're not who I am.
Yeah.
I realized that very clearly one day when I was feeling so sad. And it just, again, dawned on me. It wasn't anything I learned. It was just something that came in my mind that I can feel the sadness within me, but it's not who I am.
Yeah.
I can just allow that sadness to be there and I
Yes.
can still function as a human being. This sadness is not going to kill me. It's not going to make me jump out the window.
Yeah.
It's just there and it's going to move through me and eventually evaporate as long as I don't turn it into something more than it is. Put a storyline on it. Oh, yeah, poor little me, or talk to other people and look for sympathy. I mean, there are certain things you have to kind of put into practice, and part of it was I don't need sympathy. If anything, I wanted to find people that maybe would just be open and understand, but not give sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that was an important part of not identifying with those feelings and knowing I was something greater than them.
Yeah. No, I see that. And I think, that sometimes people maybe need a more abrasive approach of like they have taken it on as their identity. And so what is the truth? Like it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, or where you're at in your life right now. Like yesterday is gone. And anybody you lost yesterday is gone too. Like that is a fact. And sometimes people have to wake up to that truth no matter how abrasive. And I think the crazy thing about grief is that you kind of have to learn who to be now, because your identity was Christopher's father. Your identity was husband, right? That's who you were. It's how you practiced in your life. And I think there's that process of becoming conscious about this, but also being willing to be someone new now. You had to
Yes,
become someone new.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it is a continued growth and evolution. Major life challenges and losses uh, need to be reframed at some point as opportunities to learn and grow, and and you do truly become someone different through those tough experiences. You reinvent yourself, so to speak, or at least you turn the page to a new chapter, and you become a stronger, more open, more compassionate person as you look at these life challenges as opportunities to grow. And it sounds almost completely contradictory to say that, but that's what life challenges are. And I think almost everyone can relate to looking back and realizing they went through such a tough time and they're grateful for it because it made them a better person.
Yes. And I mean, I've been preaching that forever, but also I've not experienced that same loss. So I think that you packaging this up and being able to share that with people is going to have more of an impact than, on people who can relate. They definitely can relate to that more. Um what would you say to someone right now who is just in that moment of like anger because of their suffering, and what would be the one thing that you think someone who's really grieving hard right now desperately needs to hear?
Yeah. Firstly, it's part of the process. Allow those feelings to come through, whatever they may be. Anger, confusion, feelings of, just total loss of your direction in life. It's okay. Feel those feelings. Don't push them away. Don't deny them. Understand that you are going through a grieving process, and I would remind myself over and over that life, as I said before, is not here to torture me. It's here to teach me. I don't understand what it's here to teach me. And it seems so contradictory for me to say that the death of someone I loved is here to teach me, but just to try to keep a more open attitude and an open mind that we're on a journey. This is part of what life had in store for it, for us, and for the person that moved on, and to just stay open to allowing yourself to be guided. Feel the feelings, though. They're not. who you are, but feel the feelings and it's okay. Those feelings burn themselves out as you move through them. If you push them down or deny or suppress them, they just become bigger and they
Yeah,
keep coming up in a bigger and stronger way. But if you just experience them and feel them, you can move through them and amazingly get to another point where you see something a little bit differently. And you move through that and you just keep taking one step forward each day if you can, knowing that you will get through this and there is a pathway where you can have joy, peace, total healing, and gratitude for the experience.
I love that. Uh, Steve, tell us something about Christopher. Maybe that he used to do or something that he did that still makes you laugh when you think about it today.
Yeah, Christopher had an amazing sense of humor. He would, take the just most common thing that happened and somehow turn it into the funniest thing. He and I just even had a little, I don't know if it was a secret language between us that we understood. That he'd, make a certain face or a noise or whatever when we were, even with other people, and I would just crack up because I just knew it, what he was thinking. We kind
Yeah.
of got it. There was a connection between us. But Chris was just, you know, certainly beyond his time. He was an old soul. And this is not just me as a grieving father. I can tell you that the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people that I've heard from that knew him, that were touched by him,
Yeah.
they were just, I learned so much more about him. My relationship with him, you think as a father, well, I know my son. Well, no, one little narrow,
Yeah.
relationship. I started to learn so many more things about Christopher, the kind of boyfriend he was, the kind of friend he was to his friends, how he acted in so many experiences, and how, I saw him in ways that I would have never have seen him otherwise. But it was always with a kind of a lightness and a sense of humor that he moved through his life with.
I love that. What um what do you think you would say about the legacy that you have, whether intentionally or unintentionally, created for him and everything that you've gone through?
Yeah, I think in my ongoing relationship with Chris, because I do feel through the journaling and through meditation and or just when I'm quiet, and that's a very important part that I talk about in my book. We're all overstimulated in this world of devices and everything else. We need to find time to allow the volume in our head to quiet. And whether it's in nature, whether you just, go take a walk or whatever, we need quietude. And in that, I know that Christopher and I are walking this path together. I feel that Christopher and I wrote this book together. It wasn't my experience only, it was both of us. And if it was not for Christopher, I could have never have written this book. He was there with me every step of the way. And so I think I think he feels very, whatever, fulfilled, whatever word I could call it, that
Yeah.
we have put something together that will make a difference, already has made a difference to many people. And I hope as the book continues to get exposure, it'll continue to make a difference and truly help people see death and therefore life in a much
Yeah.
bigger and healthier way.
I love that. Where can people find your book?
Easiest thing to do is to go to my website, which is my name, Steven, Steven, Ferrara, Ferrara.com. And from there, they'll see a lot of articles and interviews, and they could go to Amazon and just look up Grief to Gratitude, Steven Ferrara. It'll be there, or they can get there from my website. They can get the Instagram and Facebook and different postings and interviews that I have. So the website's best, or they just go to Amazon and look for Grief to Gratitude.
I love that. Steve, this is the part of the show where, for what it's worth, I get to tell you what I think makes you special. It's not that you've experienced loss, because unfortunately, a lot of people have. It is what you have chosen to do with it. You walked through the kind of pain that could have left you bitter, could have left you angry, could have made you close your heart forever. And instead, you became curious and you were willing to search for meaning and you sought understanding. And now, just the fact that you're helping people realize that grief and gratitude are not enemies, sometimes
Mhm.
they can exist in the same breath. You remind people that love doesn't end when someone's life ends, and that healing is possible even after the deepest heartbreak. I think the work that you're doing is powerful. I think that the impact is going to be powerful, and I think that makes you incredibly special. To everyone listening, life is precious, and it's not because it lasts forever, because it doesn't. The people you love, the moments you treasure, the opportunities in front of you, you guys, those are gifts. Don't wait. Don't assume tomorrow is guaranteed. Love deeply, forgive quickly, show up fully. God never promised us a life without pain, but He did promise that pain would not have the final word. So be courageous, be present, and please remember that your mess is your message. Even your grief, maybe especially your grief, maybe the heartbreak, even the chapters you wish never happened. Sometimes the deepest, deepest wounds become the greatest source of healing for other people, using them exactly how Steven is doing this. If this episode speaks to you, please share it out with someone who needs it. Let's make sure that we are getting Steven's book out into the world to help this message for grieving people everywhere. And I know you know someone, okay? And if you guys are ready for the hot seat, I dare you to come tell me why you're special. Steven, thank you so much for coming on here and being personal with us and sharing your story and your life with your son.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you.